Hello, Sober Psychology family. It's Michael, your resident headspace explorer, back to wrestle with the beautiful mess that is the human psyche. And today we're diving into a topic that sounds like it belongs on a bumper sticker, but it cuts deeper than a philosopher's diary. Helping others. Bring it on. Now, before you roll your eyes and think that I'm about to preach like some motivational poster, here's the hook. Helping others isn't just about being nice. It's a psychological lifeline that can pull you out of your own chaos, I promise you, especially in the gritty world of addiction and recovery. It's like finding out that the lifeboat that you're throwing to someone else is the one that's actually keeping you afloat as well. It's pretty interesting. It's called a paradox. Anyways, we're going to unpack this with surgical precision and the enthusiasm of a kid with a new Lego set. I guess that works. I'll lean on research so you can think like brain scans and hard numbers. And then I'm going to toss in some practical tips that you can actually use. And then I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of humor that won't make you cringe. I'm sorry, I just lied. It will make you cringe. You know how it goes. But whether you're listening on Spotify with your morning coffee or watching me flail my arms on YouTube, this one's for you. So let's get to it. Welcome to the show where we break down the mental health stigma, navigate sobriety with humor, and prove that it's okay to laugh while you heal. Let's get real, let's get honest, and maybe a little weird. Growth is messy, but you don't have to do it alone. This is Sober Psychology. First off, I just want to thank you guys. We had a great response last week for last week's episode, and actually have been getting a lot of traction on previous episodes. So this obviously is still new to me. This is episode 26 or 27, whatever it is. But we're starting to get more and more people who are looking into stuff and commenting, and that helps a lot for me personally with the channel. But it's also encouraging to see that other people are beginning to take in and start conversations about what we're talking about. So that's huge, and I just want to thank you all if you're returning to the channel over and over again, week in and week out, and showing the love and support by sharing it, by commenting. You're the real MVP. That's all I got to say. I'll even look at you over here. You're the real MVP. You want to go over here? You're the real MVP. And we'll go over here. You're the real MVP. Again, if you're, not watching the video format of this, you're missing out on all the camera angles. So, but then again, you're not really missing out. I don't know. We're just rambling at this point. Anyways, let's start with the basics. What does it mean to help others? Psychologically, it's an action, big or small, where you intentionally support someone else's well-being. You could be listening to a friend vent, you could be volunteering at a shelter, or in recovery, you could be sponsoring someone. It's not just altruism, it's a behavior wired into our brains. Evolutionary psychology, so if you think about evolutionary psychology, you could look up a guy named Robert Trivers, and he published work in the 70s, I think 1971, on reciprocal altruism. And he says that we help because it boosts group survival. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, and then we both avoid getting eaten by a bear. A lot of what you'll pay attention to, if you'll pay attention to it in previous episodes, a lot of the way that we operate is wired into some ancestral traits. We are tribal as human beings. And naturally, for survival, you needed to stay close to the tribe. And so think about that as we're going through this, as far as helping others. This is kind of where my heart is at too, because I feel like as a society, we've lost a lot of it. It's dog eat dog, every man for himself. And you could blame it on capitalism. You could blame it on social media, whatever you want to blame it on. It's a corruption of the heart one way or the other, when you're just focusing on yourself and refusing to help other people because they're human beings. I don't care what your religious background is. I don't care what your cultural upbringing is. It doesn't matter. You're a human being. And if we can snap back into this reality that we are here because our ancestors helped each other in some form or fashion for survival, then hopefully it can start to help us see things from a different lens, right? But this isn't just all caveman vibes. Helping others triggers a cascade of neurological fireworks. Studies from the University of Pittsburgh show that altruistic acts light up the mesolimbic pathway, which is the brain's reward system. This is the same circuit that goes wild for chocolate, or less innocently, for cocaine. So here's the math behind that. Helping someone increases dopamine levels by roughly 20% in some brain imaging studies. Also, acts of kindness can boost oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, by up to 15%. And then when you want to talk about stress reduction, cortisol drops by close to roughly 10% after any type of prosocial behavior. Per psychoneuroendocrinology. That's a big word. Psychoneuroendocrinology. Nailed it. Didn't even get tongue-tied. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will step down. Anyways, so helping others feels good because your brain's throwing a party. But here's the catch. It's not always easy, especially when you're wrestling with your own demons and your own crap. I get it. I understand it. Trust me. Speaking of demons, have you ever tried helping someone when you're barely holding it together? It's like trying to fix a leaky pipe while your house is on fire. I had a friend, we'll just call him Steve. But he would offer to drive his buddy to AA meetings while he was secretly, the dude was like close to relapse, it felt like. He was just fighting his own cravings. And he would joke, we joke about it kind of, I guess, in a cynical way in a recovery community, but he's like, I'm out here playing Uber driver for sobriety, but my brain's still got one foot in the liquor store. And we would laugh about it, but that's a real thing, right? So many times where he wanted to go back and to just get that next drink. He wanted to get that next fix, though he wanted to escape, whatever it is. He would be faced with I say dilemma for him at the time, but it's the reality of saying, okay, this person's counting on me. I'm going to show up. I told him I was going to give him a ride, and he would do it, and it would get his mind off of the craving. Maybe it's momentary, but momentary. Why did I say it that way? Maybe it's momentary, but he would forget for a moment that he had this craving because his job, his mission, his purpose was, hey, I'm going to get this person to the meeting, right? Which I challenged him. I was like, well, you should be in the meeting too. I didn't say it that nicely, but I'm not going to talk on this podcast all the time the way that we talk to each other in recovery. But that's just a quick example of the fact that, helping someone else, it takes the attention off of yourself, right? Big help neurologically. So why does helping others even matter, you should ask? Well, that's a great question. Let's break it down with some psychological heavyweights like Martin Seligman, who he's the father of positive psychology. He talks about other-oriented, I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but others-oriented behavior. In his, I think it's called a PERMA model, which is for purpose and meaning. I cannot stand psychologists and acronyms, by the way. The more I get into this and the closer I get to this master's, the more I understand that the acronyms are ludicrous, okay? I was going to try and make a quick acronym about that, but my brain's not working. Anyways, I digress. Helping others gives you a reason to get out of bed, even if it feels like life punched you when you didn't see it coming. Studies from the Journal of Positive Psychology in 2016 found that people who volunteer report 25% higher life satisfaction than non-volunteers. It's a pretty big number. It doesn't seem like it. That's a big number, though. And then as far as depression drops, prosocial behaviors reduce depressive symptoms by roughly 30% in some trials. And then you talk about longevity. Older people, older adults, think, your retired individuals or whatnot, who end up helping other people live 5 to 7 years longer per social science and medicine, I think. Yeah, check me on that. Anyways, all this to say, it gives you a reason, it gives you motivation, whatever it is. And I think a lot of us, at least a lot of people that I've worked with, dealt with, sponsored, gone through rehab with, just whether or not you're addict, alcoholic, like a lot of us struggle with the fear of disappointment. Nobody wants to disappoint somebody else. Sure, you have some people that have more of a nonchalant mentality about it, but if you tell someone, I'm going to help you out, it's kind of like a commitment thing, right? That's a handshake. You gave them your word, and we've talked on this channel about how important integrity is just as a human being, but it gives you a purpose. So that's one of the things that scares me is like, again, we've talked about, I've whined and bitched and moaned about the whole age thing. I'm 35 years old. I'm just now getting my life seemingly on track. And I'm grateful for that because I don't want to be 85 years old and have nothing to do. I want to have the opportunity to continue to help people because I know, I have seen this. It gives you this longevity that you can't really understand until you experience it, right? But science backs this up. So older people who, are at the end of their life in the sense of, no more, you don't have to work anymore. You have unconstructed time, unstructured time, if you will, that gives an extra 5 to 7 years, almost a decade extra if you're helping other people. It gives you a purpose, right? And it gets you out of your head. You don't have all the cortisol spikes because you're worrying about yourself. You're giving that, you're helping someone else out, right? It takes the attention off of yourself. But because this is a, sad boy channel, I guess, it's not just warm fuzzies, right? Helping others rewires your brain for resilience, okay? Neuroscientist Richard Davidson's work at Wisconsin shows that altruistic acts strengthen the prefrontal cortex, which is your brain's CEO. We talk about the prefrontal cortex all the time, and therefore improving emotional regulation, which is huge. Go back and look at our episode on emotional regulation and tell me that that's not important. In other words, helping someone else helps you boss your own feelings around. Very important. Okay. We've talked a lot about prefrontal cortex and how that operates with the amygdala being the alarm system. And I think I'm going to talk about the amygdala here in a little bit, but the alarm system, that's where the stress is going to come from. It's the fight or flight. It pushes you into this state of like, do I run? Do I fight? Like, what am I supposed to do? You're in this constant state of survival. And that's where a lot of our emotions get caught up in. Something happens to us. Our body's telling us emergency, red flag, all the alarms going off, the whole weather sirens just, whoa, that was awful. We should get a sound guy. Maybe one day we can have enough money to have a sound guy, but that's what happens when emotions hit into the amygdala, right? And that tends to be the first receptor of all these emotions. What you want to do is get it to that prefrontal cortex. That is the logic, right? That's the part that's going to think through it. That's the adult in the situation. You're going to have a sense of calm because now your brain is developing this attack list. It's bullet point as opposed to all these words just thrown onto a page. Your brain's now taking it to that prefrontal cortex and it's helping you hit that attack list. Here's some boxes that you can check. It'll make you feel really good. Here's numbers 1 through 10 of what you should be doing. Here's how to progress through it. That's always your goal with emotions. We talk about name it to tame it. We talk about all of these ways that you can take an emotion and you can start to push it to that prefrontal cortex, get your brain to start logically processing through all of this. Helping others is getting you into that mindset. It's starting to rewire your brain into that positive thinking, that structured thinking, right? So now let's talk about addiction, because this is where helping others gets very, very real. Addiction is a selfish beast, and it's not because you're a bad person, but it's because it hijacks your priorities. The National Institute on Drug Abuse says that addiction shrinks your world to one goal, which is the next hit. Relationships, work, self-respect, they are all collateral damage. Self-criticism then will creep in, and it says, I'm a failure, I've hurt everyone. And then shame locks you into this cycle that we've talked about over and over again. Does that sound familiar for anybody? Question mark? The interesting part about addicts and alcoholics, I've listened to this recently from a biologist, and he does a lot of like the health hacks and things like that. But he said something to me that was very profound. We are very quick to label addicts and alcoholics with people who have a mental illness, and I'll give it to you. It centers in our mind rather than our body, but the reality is that addicts and alcoholics, I think in part, maybe, this isn't a comprehensive statement, but I think in part addicts and alcoholics are formed because we just want to find a way to be normal. Okay. And a lot of that struggle comes from all of this wanting to escape these thoughts, and maybe they're more highlighted and maybe they're more amplified than what most people deal with. And we don't know what to do sometimes. We just want that dopamine rush. That's it. That's why if you go and look at like athletes, especially like professional fighters, adrenaline junkies, I would venture to say that the majority of those are recovered addicts, alcoholics. I find myself, I'm grateful that I'm not in a position where I can wingsuit off of a mountain somewhere, because I'd be doing it, because that getting 15% closer to death, having that adrenaline rush, like for me, that's the way it is. If you look at most AA people, right? How many of them are cigarette smokers or caffeine addicts? Right? I've been both. Right? I drink caffeine a lot. Just either constantly drinking coffee or I have an energy drink or whatever, but like it's that dopamine. We're constantly seeking it. And we're quick to label these people, addicts and alcoholics with mental disorders. We're just wanting to find a way to be normal, right? And something developed, whether our body had this adaptation or propensity to be more locked in to the substance. I don't know. Again, we've gone over the studies with this before. It's, there isn't anything that's really locked, set in stone just yet, but that's the hard part. A lot of like addicts and alcoholics, especially, they get into recovery and then they become addicted to like the gym. You know how many dudes that I know that just get addicted to going to the gym? Nothing wrong with it. That's a healthy habit to have. I didn't swing that way. I have before, but like I get into woodworking and then I'm just locked in. Look at the wall behind me. I did that in a weekend because I'm locked in. I need this rush, right? Look at this channel. I went all in, man. I don't halfway do something, but I'm just looking for that next fix, if you will. All right. And so that's hard to do when you're so wrapped up in your mind like that. If we focus that attention and we direct it on being able to help other people, that's where it starts to help us rewire our brain in a positive way, because our prefrontal cortex is just chugging through, it's powering through, right? And it helps us learn how to live with these desires to want to escape or be normal, if you will, because helping others makes you feel very normal. No matter how you want to spin it, no matter how much you want to argue with me, you're wrong if you think the other way, okay? I'm very open-minded and I want everybody to have conversation. But if you go and help somebody else and you tell me that didn't somehow or another make you feel more normal in the sense that it just felt right, then you're wrong, okay? Okay, love you guys, thanks. Anyways, recovery is going to flip the script on this, and helping others is the secret weapon, okay? Or it is a secret weapon. In Alcoholics Anonymous, step 12, it's carrying the message, helping others to stay sober, right? Why is that? Great question. Let me give you a really good answer. It's because it freaking works, okay? We're helping others. We're carrying the message to other addicts, alcoholics, right? I'm going to continue for the rest of my life to give so freely what was so freely given to me. Look at my book. This is my tattered, torn up, worn down, got all my notes in it and all that. A note just fell out, but at the very beginning of this book, very front of it, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. It says, protect the integrity of this message. That's my goal, right? I'm going to protect the integrity of the message. There's a lot in that tells me to continue going out and giving this to other people who need it, right? A 2018 study in Substance Abuse, I think it's a magazine, found that AA members who sponsor others are 40% less likely to relapse within the first year, which is very big because that first year is not easy. I'm going to let you know. It also showed, as far as like social connection goes, helping builds trust, which therefore reduces isolation, because now you're creating these bonds and these friendships, which is a key relapse trigger. And it does this by about 35%. That's huge. Isolation is a very difficult one for us addicts, alcoholics, because that's where we play in our heads. We get to the point where our mind is trying to kill us and make it look like an accident, right? And then you talk about like self-efficacy, teaching sobriety skills. It boosts your confidence in your own recovery by about 20%. I remember the first time that I was ever able to share, and it was within the group, the rehab that I was at. So I knew these guys well enough to where I shouldn't feel super uncomfortable. And I hated it. I was so uncomfortable. I didn't feel like I was worthy. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But getting to this point of doing it over and over again. And then you go to meetings where you don't know any of these people, which is the cool thing about AA or NA, is because you're like every single one of them, right? We're all the same when it comes to addicts, alcoholics. But you start to share, and you're never wrong when you're sharing your experience, right? Because this is the way you're supposed to share in AA, is what it was like before and what it has been like since, what it's like now. You just show that there is hope in all of this, right? It's messy, it's confusing, I followed these steps. I did what this asked and I submitted to this. I didn't comply. I just gave my life to this. And then now here's where I'm at. And it gives people hope. There's going to be a new dude sitting in there listening and just eating this up, being like, oh, I didn't think it was possible, but then I'm seeing this guy do it, so it's got to be possible. And I've experienced this in my own life. I started sponsoring someone when I was 6 months sober, so still very, very wobbly. I started mentoring a guy who had just finished the 90-day program. And I quickly realized that all I was doing was just telling him what I wish someone would have told me years and years and years ago before I got into rehab, right? That act of helping, it didn't just help keep me sober, it gave me a purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something, right? It's very important. Purpose is great, but let's just be real honest. Helping others can oftentimes feel like signing up for extra homework. And I get it. I understand. You're not selfish when you say that. That's just the awakening that you've had in your mind. That's the awareness that you've been able to obtain, right? You just kind of get to this point where you're like, I'm barely keeping my own life together. And then, sorry, my computer's freezing up. I'm hoping I don't lose you guys. But you just kind of get to this point where you're like, I'm barely keeping my own life together. And then now I'm supposed to jump in and try and help somebody else. It's like being asked to organize a potluck when your fridge has nothing but ketchup packets. But here's the cool paradox behind that is that potluck might just feed you too, right? So all of this, recovery, you read the big book, you read a lot of, you even reading in the Bible, this is so paradoxical, right? In order to gain my life, I have to give it, right? And it's fascinating when you submit to it. It's fascinating when you do get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm going to surrender to this idea. And you start to see how it changes everything, but it does get exhausting. So we can get analytical with this. Helping others isn't all sunshine. Okay. Of course, I had to be a Debbie Downer somewhere in here. Guys, give me a break. But there's a dark side to all of this. Psychologists call it compassion fatigue. And if you're constantly giving without refilling your tank, you burn out. That's just the way humans work. A 2015 study in professional psychology found that 50% of counselors and social workers report compassion fatigue symptoms. If only I was going into a profession like that, huh? Oh, crap. Over-helping increases anxiety by about 15% in high-stress roles. Okay, and then chronic stress from over-giving raises cortisol by about 20%. That's going to affect your physical health big time. And I think that was in Health Psychology, which I think is a magazine, maybe a book, don't know. Anyways, in recovery, this is a landmine. You're already raw, and maybe you're grieving losses or you're fighting cravings. And if you overcommit to helping others, you risk your own sobriety, okay? This is a very important lesson, and I've had to talk through, one of my buddies who passed away. I remember sitting down on the couch and us having this conversation. And he was one of the guys I didn't really sponsor, but I was kind of a friend, and he would stay up, and he would, this is when I had moved away from the rehab, and I'd moved back home, and he would text me until, midnight, 1 o'clock. Okay, and he's texting through his cravings. He's working through his thoughts. He feels like he's so scrambled. It's all in the amygdala, right? Like he's got to get this off of his chest. And is that noble that he was trying to do that? Sure, it absolutely is. Is that sustainable? Absolutely not, right? It's not sustainable for me to maintain that. It's noble that I'm listening to him, but that's not a sustainable relationship. I'm not helping him in any way, really. I'm just I'm just getting to this point where I'm not providing that structure in any way for him or for me, right? And I'll be honest, I crashed pretty hard, right? It was tough because I felt guilty. I felt like I need to stay awake or, something bad's going to happen, all right? The lesson behind this is that helping others works when you help yourself. I was refusing to help myself because I was helping this guy. And that's a very difficult choice, right? It's kind of like, we talk about mothers, especially for these guys that go into rehab, and they're just trying to love their kids. They're trying to love their sons. But oftentimes with addicts and alcoholics, the sad reality is that if you're loving someone else to a certain point, giving them $30 here, $30 there, doing this and doing that, you're enabling them. Addicts, alcoholics have to hit rock bottom before they're able to see the truth sometimes, and that's the unfortunate reality. Same goes for just anybody. If people will take advantage of your kindness, okay? And that's something that it's up to you to pay attention to, because you will hit burnout and you cannot give what you don't have. And if you don't have energy, if you don't have a way to care for yourself, you're going to eventually burn out, and then that's going to negatively affect the person who is looking for help, right? So anyways, tip number 1 for all of this: set freaking boundaries. This is not selfish, it's survival. So here's how you do it. Say no when you need to say no. If you're tapped out, it's okay just to say, I can't do it right now. Okay? You're not giving up on them. You're saying, I cannot do it right now, right? Set time limits. This is something that I wish I would have thought of way back when, but just cap the helping time, right? We're going to have a 30-minute to an hour phone call. That's it. Then we can reset, do it again the next day, right? There's a reason that when you go into therapy, it's a 1-hour session, 45 minutes to an hour session, right? At a certain point, you get the law of diminishing returns, right? Like you need to give yourself a break, okay? And then just check yourself. Before saying yes, just ask yourself, do I have the energy for this? Do not feel ashamed if you don't, okay? That's self-awareness, that's being mature, that's having emotional regulation. This is a good spot to be in, right? Research from the Journal of Counseling Psychology shows that boundary setting reduces burnout by 25%. And in recovery, this means that you can help without losing yourself, okay? 25% is a lot. As a sponsor, I had to learn to say, I'll call you tomorrow. And I promise you I slept a lot better for it, right? It's a tough thing to do, especially when you're someone like me who has a messiah complex, but it is very valuable for your own health, okay? And it will pay off in the long run, promise you. So let's zoom in on recovery again. Helping others in sobriety isn't just nice, it's transformative. Why? Because it rewrites your narrative, okay? Addiction tells you that you're a taker. Helping proves that you're a giver. So let's break that down. It gives you an identity shift, if you will. So a 2020 study in Addiction Research and Theory Journal found that helping others in recovery increases recovery capital, which is your sense of worth, basically, by 30%. Big number, okay? And then as far as social bonds are concerned, helping builds sober networks, which is very important. It cuts out that loneliness by about 40%. This is per the Journal of Substance Abuse Treatment, I believe. And then you have the mirror effect, which is pretty cool because teaching someone else reinforces your own lessons. It's why AA sponsors often say that I stay sober by helping you stay sober. And this is real, okay? This goes for anything. A lot of times, this is going to put me in the cuckoo house, but like when I'm studying for school and I really need to acquire a certain type of knowledge, I will have a conversation with myself about what I just read from both sides, right? And that helps me begin to learn it. Now that's, a very weird practice maybe. I don't know. I've done that since high school, but when you have all of this knowledge, when you read all the pages in the big book, when you get to the point where you're beginning to learn this and how to live it, but then you go and you teach it, it absorbs a different way. You see it in a different lens. It starts to make a lot more sense because you're seeing it from a different perspective, right? So it's very important just to be able to help other people in that way, because now it's going to reinforce everything that you've just learned, which sometimes can feel like drinking water from a fire hose, right? This isn't theory. This is brain science. Helping others activates the anterior cingulate cortex, which is tied to empathy, and it calms the amygdala, which is your stress center. That's the alarm system, right? Told you we were going to talk about the amygdala. The results of this: less craving, more calm, very important. A 2019 fMRI study in Nature Communications showed that altruistic acts reduce stress-related brain activity by about 15%. This is helping others reduces stress, period. Even when it's stressful, it still reduces stress. So this is going to bring us to tip number 2. Start small. That's all you have to do. Just start small. You don't need to be a superhero. Just try these simple things, okay? First and foremost, just listen, okay? Spend 10 minutes really hearing a friend or a sponsee. No fixing, just listening. We are so bad as human beings, especially in this generation of phones and technology. We want instant gratification. Instead of hearing what someone is saying, instead of trying to get a picture of what's going on in their heart and the chaos that's going on there, we're just waiting for our turn to talk. And if all you're doing is you've got this next comment just loaded up, what I want to say, how I want to talk about me, while this person's pouring themselves out, then you're not listening to what they're saying. You're not hearing any of it, right? We've talked about this in relationships too. This active listening, it's very important. Repeat back what they said if you have to. Get yourself into a practice of listening to somebody without waiting for your turn to talk. Just listen to them. And then begin to share. This is your time, okay? The spotlight's now on you. Tell your recovery story. That is it. Go and share the message, please. Don't hide it. Don't run away from it. It helps others, and then it ultimately will ground you. We talked about this in the last episode, and I think the 2-3 episodes before that, where all of these celebrities and athletes and whatnot that are coming out talking about their sobriety journey. Do you know how effing powerful that is? Do you know how big that is? That's very important, because now that makes that person, it grounds that person. It's a humble gesture, right? Like, hey, I messed up. I screwed up. But it also allows them to connect with other people in a different capacity. It helps someone else out, right? What am I doing right now? Do you think that I want a bunch of random people on the internet to learn about me in that capacity? Because you know how many negative comments I get on my YouTube on a week-to-week basis? Trying to pick apart my life as if you know me? I'm pouring myself out. It's tough. I don't always want to do that. But then, out of those 2-3 nasty comments that I'll get from these people who know more than I do, who are anti-Christian and all the whatever it is, I'll get that one person that's like, hey, this really helped. I've had a family member that's been struggling with this, and hearing it from that perspective was really cool. And like, for me, it's not about tooting my own horn. It's about the fact that I was able to provide some level of help to somebody, even if it was just a 15-second video of providing a little bit of calm. That's pretty cool. Okay. And then you've got the volunteering aspect of this too. Even just an hour at a community shelter can boost your mood, per the American Journal of Public Health. Okay. Just volunteer, find ways to help. I've told you this before. You may get shot doing this. It may be creepy nowadays, but if you see someone carrying their groceries and they got like 2 other kids like hanging off of their arms, like this single mom that's just doing her best, and you have free hands, you're walking into the store and she's parked kind of close to you, even just saying, ma'am, would it be okay if I helped you carry your groceries? She may freak out and say no, and that's okay, but you helped. You tried to help, right? Listening to somebody, it's just these small steps. That's all you have to do, right? Small acts, these small steps, these small gestures, they begin to compound, right? My friend, the guy the Uber driver, the guy that I was telling you about, who was driving his friend to the AA meetings, he started by just sharing one tip per AA meeting. That was it. He was terrified to talk in front of people, but just one little tip. Like, hey, this is what's helping me. I learned this from reading the big book. I've learned this from experiencing. It's helped me a lot. And that eventually snowballed into confidence that he didn't even know that he had. He started paying attention to this. He started realizing I'm doing a lot. I'm putting in a lot of work, and I'm grateful for that. But it just, those slow things started to compound. More and more people came up and talked to him, and then he started sponsoring people, which is freaking awesome. All right. And here's the funny part about all of this. Helping others can make you feel like a fraud. Okay, I get it. You're thinking, who am I to help? My life's a dumpster fire. I've been so wrong to so many people. It's like showing up to a potluck with a half-eaten bag of chips and hoping that nobody notices. But the truth behind all of that is that they don't care about your bag of chips. They're just glad that you showed up. That's it. And in recovery, your mess is your message. I didn't even have that written down, by the way. Your mess is your message. That has to be written like in cursive on something to put in your kitchen, on shiplap or something. Your mess is your message. Anyways, let's widen the lens here a little bit. Helping others isn't just for sobriety. It's for life. Work, family, random strangers. Pro-social behavior builds meaning. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, said that the purpose comes from serving something bigger than you. Helping others is that something. A 2017 meta-analysis in Psychological Bulletin found that employees who help colleagues report 20% higher job satisfaction. And then also, acts of kindness increase partner trust by 15%. And then, regular helping cuts anxiety by 10 to 20% across populations. Those are big numbers, and that's a lot. Helping others boosts so much. And again, it's paradoxical. It's going to help you, right? If you give your life, you're going to realize, okay, this is fueling me somehow. This is weird how this works, right? But if I'm helping this person, it ultimately will help me. All right. And that's not the reason that you set out to do it necessarily. All right. We're not doing this for a trophy. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And that is what helps you. You get to this point where you realize, oh my gosh, like I feel great for doing that. You become addicted to the positivity. It's fascinating. But it's not a free lunch. You've got to balance it. You overdo it, and you're like I was, just completely burning out over and over again. You underdo it, and you miss the dopamine hit. So the sweet spot is be intentional. Find a way to be sustainable in your helping, right? So tip number 3, make it intentional. Random acts of kindness are great, but planning helps it stick. So you can try this, right? Set a weekly goal. Pick one person to help each week. It could be a coworker, it could be a neighbor, family member, sponsee, whatever. Pick one person to help each week. Again, small steps. You don't have to do anything crazy. You're not Superman. You can do the simple stuff, very small steps. Then reflect on this. We've talked about this as far as the mindfulness training and whatnot, but journal for 5 minutes after helping, okay? What felt good? What drained you? Be honest with yourself. Start to hone in on it, right? You may be able to find a niche where you can say, okay, this is how I can really help people, right? And then you can go balls to the wall with it, right? Sorry, that was kind of crude, but we did it. And then celebrate, right? Make sure that you're celebrating. Acknowledge your effort. Even if it's just saying, yeah, I did that. That's great. Again, you don't need a pat on the back. It feels much better when no one else was looking, right? You just did it because it's the right thing to do. A 2018 study in Emotion, which is a journal, I think, it found that intentional kindness increases well-being by 20% more than spontaneous acts. Be intentional, right? We talk about this all the time. Be intentional with your time. Be intentional with your decisions. Think through it. Do it, okay? In recovery, this builds a habit of giving that outlasts the cravings, I promise you. So where does this leave us? Helping others is a paradox. That makes it difficult, I understand, but you give and you get. It's the ebb and flow, right? It's not about being a saint, it's about being human. In addiction, it's a lifeline. In recovery, it's a legacy. The science is clear. Dopamine, oxytocin, purpose, it's all real. But so are the risks. You set boundaries, you start small, and you become very intentional. You're not just helping someone else, you're rebuilding yourself. Get out there and build, baby. So here's your challenge. This week, pick one person and help them out. Find a way to help them. It could be a kind word, it could be a shared story, or just listening. You don't have to say anything, you just listen, right? Notice how it feels. If you're in recovery, know this. Every time that you help, you're proving addiction wrong. You're proving it wrong. So keep doing it. You're not a taker, you're a builder. Go build. Anyways, thank you for joining me. Sober Psychology Crew. Audio folks, I'll catch you all next week. YouTube warriors, smash the like button if this resonated at all. Subscribe if you're new, please. It would be great. Drop a comment and let me know who you're going to be helping this week. Let's keep the conversation alive. Let's keep it going. Keep talking about it. Get it out there. Let's go. But until next time, keep your head up. Keep your heart open. And for the love of God, go help somebody. It might just save you and them both. Love you guys.